Alright, I wanted to do a little update here. It's June. We're in the middle of the dry season. It's probably a month before the monsoons come. And we are getting defoliated here, which isn't necessarily a huge deal. Some of these trees have been completely defoliated, and if you look really close, they're even eating at the bark a little bit. But everything dies down in August, and hopefully the tree put enough energy down into its small root collar to have the energy to rebud when things ease up in August, as the monsoons get have their full effect and green up the area. The bugs might divert. That's what happened last year. They got away from the trees and either went away for the season, or they just got busy on other things. So I dig these holes next to these trees, keep them open so that they could take water. Then this one's doing good. So that's the weird thing. This is what I talk about with speculating but not jumping to conclusions, because I don't know what's going on here. They both have rock cover, they both get periodic moisture. That one's normally covered. I just uncovered it for the sake of checking it out once I noticed it was getting defoliated. This one's getting defoliated as well. And you can see, well, he went hiding. There are these little, I don't know, when I was a kid we called them sex bugs because they're always walking around with their butts stuck together. But and I don't know if it's only them. I think the grasshoppers are getting in there too. This guy, look, you can really see there. You can really see the eating of the bark. This one really ate it down thin. That's probably all gonna die. But they haven't girdled it. And so this is happening out here, but not out where those trees are, closer to the wash. The closer you are to the wash, the less it seems you get this kind of thing. Whereas, and there's not that many plants over there besides junipers. So you would think that's all they have to go on over there as well, but it's not the case. So let's move over here. I can show you some of the other stuff I'm doing in the little tree nursery we have, which is just a cluster of pots at the moment. Trees are getting ready, and in the meanwhile, I'm digging these small basins. They don't look like much here, but they're about a shovel blade deep, and then I just feather them out to their level. You could dump more than an entire 5-gallon bucket of water in there and they'll take it. And they're spaced out every 20 feet or so. Got one here, got one there, got one out past that berm over there. These ones are, these were supposed to get buried in there, but I'm going to use them somewhere else just to sponge up water and decompose. Look at that. Yeah, it's the grasshoppers. For now, they're still eggs right now, but I have game fowl getting ready to hatch. And what I mean by game fowl is not pheasants, but same sort of chickens that people use in games, illegal games, but they're good for running wild and putting a lot of pressure on the insects, and they survive predation. Look at this, completely defoliated. But I'm sure this trunk can still spit out buds, and if I keep it watered, then it can make it to August, cruise through the late end of summer, make itself some energy with its new buds to survive winter, and come out stronger, hopefully. We'll see what happens. My strategy with the bugs out here is, of course, the birds and stuff, but if you just keep planting and keep running your head into that wall, eventually something's got to crack. Everything starts slow, and the idea is, a little berm right there, and the idea is that it'll take off exponentially at some point. And I just got to hang in there till it does, and that's kind of what I'm banking off of, as well as trying new things and paying attention, of course. This is one of the elms that I gathered in the winter and planted, and it seems to be doing okay. You got new buds right there. And let's head over to the nursery over here. And show you what's been going on here. Still have some elms in the pot right there. And these are our Russian olives. And there's close to 50 of them in this cluster right here. This cluster right here, they haven't germinated yet, but they're getting close. There's one getting ready to come up right there. These take a little bit longer than the elms. That's a velvet ash or Arizona ash, Modesto ash, depending on what you call it. It's got several common names. And then these are Russian olives that are starting to get a little bit bigger. And then tons of elms. I plant a lot in there in case there's any kind of bug pressure. You know, maybe one will make it if the bugs start eating it, but it doesn't seem that the bugs have gotten in. For some that haven't germinated, I just put new seeds in there and I'll keep watering and they'll come up. These seeds tend to have a really high germination rate from the Siberian elm. Let's get over here. In this bag right here, you know, every spring, the elms in the area drop their seeds, and all you really need is one bag for a season and you've got more than enough. I'm that weird guy you see on the side of the road, digging up trees and sweeping up seeds. But I wanted to come into here to make a case for these guys, because if you look at a lot of, you know, general wisdom that comes out of, you know, forestry, that is not to use these, especially in these areas, because they outcompete a lot of the natives. As you can see, I mean, way out there, we were just out there. I don't have any natives growing. The logistics that would go into and time that would go into, you know, turning this property into oak savanna would be much higher than the work and the energy that goes into establishing these. These volunteer everywhere. In fact, I'm not just out here going out on a limb and planting these. The entire region is proof of concept that these things will grow. They volunteer, they grow tall. Even when they grow alone, they tend to at least get up to 25 feet tall and put out canopy. And with intensive management, you know, wood chippers, chopping them down into firewood, letting them, you know, copicing them, letting them grow back, you know, letting the goats go on them, they won't get out of control. You know, they tend to get out of control in places where you know, nobody's managing the area, and they tend to get out of control in areas that have already been disturbed. And so that's another thing that we don't talk about. You know, a lot of people talk about them like they're a problem, but the problem is in the areas that they're taking over is what even, you know, created the vacuum for them to take over. The Russian olive can be a bigger problem because they, you know, I've heard a lot about them chasing native cottonwoods out of riparian areas. But again, with intensive management, you know, always being there to to chop and drop them. These are nitrogen fixers. Chop and drop them. Firewood. People talk poorly about the firewood value with both of these trees, but the hardness of Russian olive rivals oak, and if you season them completely, the smell that a lot of people often talk about with these isn't going to be a problem. And if you're burning them indoor in a stove, it's also not going to be a problem because the smoke isn't getting into your home. Same thing with the Siberian elms over here. They are not going to, if you season them for a couple years, they're not going to, release an odor that, is bothersome. And with firewood, most people should be on a 2 or 3 year plan anyway. Out here, the winters aren't terrible, but you do need to heat, and with hardwoods, you just, the seasoning process, there's nothing wrong with being on a 2 year plan anyway. And out here, with the humidity so low, seasoning doesn't take too long. These trees offer so much. They offer wood, they offer firewood, fuel, browse. You can use them for small structural purposes. You can mill them. They offer timbers in some regards. No big, no large beams or anything, but they're a great start. And you can chip them into the ground. These are biomass factories here. You can chip them, you can cover the ground and set the stage for succession. You can set the stage for, native trees that take much longer. If I started this project, working with oaks, it would take 30 years. I'm going to be 40 this year. It would take 30 years before the trees ever gave a yield, and these trees are going to begin providing a yield within 5 to 7 years. I'm planting, really tight, and they are going to be getting chipped into the ground and, capturing more moisture, setting the stage for other trees that I want to establish out here. We're also using honey locusts. I have those out in the field. Those actually do provide timber, tool handles, browsing opportunities. Every fall, just as the grass is dying out, they offer, a large mature tree can offer, I've heard over 100 pounds of seed pods, which livestock definitely likes. It's not marginal browse. It's good stuff. So most people know about honey locust, though. I mean, it's a much more popular choice in dryland agroforestry. So you don't really have to make much of a case for those, and they're at least native to North America. So nobody has as much of an issue with them as they do with these guys. But look, if nobody is coming to your party, then, I mean, anyone who shows up is welcome. And that's the Siberian elm and the Russian olive. I'm not going to turn my nose up at a biomass factory that can actually make living out here independently a reality, as opposed to other trees that take, half a lifetime and way more infrastructure, way more irrigation, way more care, way more hours per tree to establish. These guys get, a bucket of water a week their first season, and then I move on. And they might not, grow without that supplemental water during the dry season right now, but they hold nice and green like you see there until the monsoons come and they put on some height. And as soon as they all get big enough to work together, provide each other with some wind shelter, they're going to start growing even faster. So look at this. Ground's fallow. I didn't do anything to it. This is the only thing growing here. This is some kind of brassica. All these you see here are seed pods. In the late winter, early spring, they take off and it's great. You can get sheep going on it, but you know, once it dries, that's it. There's nothing out here except for cattle eating every last bud that comes up before it has a chance to even become 6 inches tall. So I'll grow anything out here. I don't care what people call it. I don't care if they call it invasive. I want free firewood. I don't want to have to go into the forest to go get it. You know, browse, shelter, shade. You know, stuff I can mill down and make chicken coops out of. And then when you coppice a tree, those new shoots come out pretty straight compared to a tree that's on its first go. So I haven't really seen too many people like copicing Siberian elm, but I have seen them cut, and I have seen how straight the shoots coming out are compared to you know, trees that haven't been cut or pruned. Look at these things. Anyway, that's just me trying to make a case for the Siberian elm and the Russian olive in a place like this. I mean, if you lived here, what would you do? You know, you could go with Gamble oak, Emery oak, try to get ash, Arizona ash going in the wash. All that's going to take a lot longer, and all of it's going to be a little bit harder. So I don't think it's crazy to grow these quote-unquote invasive species, especially when they can set the stage for so much more. The big question is, you know, with human intervention, because it's already kind of indisputable that landscapes perform better with human intervention if it's done right than a wild landscape. The question is, do we optimize biomass production, or do we just preserve things and keep them in a native state, even if that means in certain areas that it can give so much more, support so many more animals, support so many more people, offer more natural resources? Or do we stick to the idea of making a place look like it did in 1491, whatever that was? Because it wasn't this. I don't know. That's a question that keeps kicking up in my mind. We'll see how hard they are to manage when they come. But I think that I'm going to benefit quite a bit from those trees. Juniper does not grow back. Once you cut it down, that's it. And I don't even know if these one seed junipers put on, you know, a foot in a year, maybe. I think less. They grow slow. I've cut ones down that are only, you know, they're in the way. They're only 15 feet tall, and you count the rings and they're 80 years old. That's not a recipe for a, I mean, yeah, they're native, but that's not a recipe for a productive landscape. You know, landscape that supports you and your family and more, offers you a living. But I'm not cutting them all down. This guy's obviously been here for a while. You know, they hold their leaves in the cold season when others do drop them, and provide birds with, you know, shelter from the wind. The berries get animals through hard times, so they have some use. But, you know, they're just, I mean, the chickens can probably roost up in there. But they're not going to provide us with a living. They can provide us with a couple years of firewood. So I'm just curious to see what people think. Trying to get into the conversation a little bit. Curious to see what people think. you know, about those two, I wouldn't call them extremes, but ideas: preservation versus maximizing biomass productivity. Anyway, you all have a good day.